Kendrick is back. He's back with his fifth and final album on TDE, Mr. Moral and the Big Steppers. I'll tell you, man, this album is a deep album, obviously. This is an album where you need to take some time to listen to. It's not an album that you can just breeze through. This is obviously an album that you will be playing over and over again. The rewind button will be pushed heavily on this album. It's the fifth studio album that he has dropped and his final album from Top Dog Entertainment. He announced this on his Oklahoma website, which revealed the LP and the release date, which dropped today, Friday the 13th at midnight. I gotta tell you, man, it's been a lot of, I don't know if I would say mixed emotions on Twitter, but I would say that this could possibly be his best album. I'm gonna go ahead and say it, y'all. I mean, I still love Good Kid, Mad City. I think that will forever be a classic, and that is a tough act to follow. But this new album that he just dropped, Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, I think is up there. I definitely think it's better than To Pimp a Butterfly. It's definitely better than Damn. It's definitely better than Section 80. This is not a hip-hop album. This album is an album that makes you think. This is an album where you need to put the phone down. You need to put the blunt down. You need to put the alcohol down. And you just need to sit back, meditate, listen, and absorb this album. This album is like reading a book. And that is why, hence, I have named this video the Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers Study Notes. This is an album that you need to study. I believe that this might even be an album that they will teach in school. This is not an album to wild out to, folks. You know, I hear some people on Twitter saying this and that and that. You know, it's not hype enough for me and I want to be able to get live and I can't get live to this album. I got to listen to it 5 or 6 times to figure out what he's talking about. That's the whole point. That's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to take the time to listen to this album. This is an album, like I said, that is supposed to make you think. It's not an album that you're supposed to just breeze through. I've been listening to this album for nearly 5 hours. I just want to tell you all that right now. 5 hours that I've been listening to this album, breaking this album down. And I still feel that I'm just getting the tip of the iceberg, the gist of this. There is so much to digest in this album. But as I've mentioned, I can tell you already, I'd say maybe by the second or third listen, I said this is official a classic. This is his best, I think, pretty much. And yeah, man, Kendrick is on his way to the Grammys. He mentioned on his website, Oklahoma, you know, which they say, you know, it has a very Kanye West feel if you see Kanye West's site as well. But in his new thoughts, I liked what he said, where he was like, I spend most of my days with fleeting thoughts, writing, listening, and collecting old beach cruisers. The morning rides keep me on the hill of silence. I go months without a phone. So he's telling y'all everything on this post, and he's telling y'all everything in this album, that he's not on his phone. He's not concerned with mainstream media. He's not concerned with any of it. And let's get right into it, man. I mean, we'll come back to this. Like I said, there's so much to digest here. After the intro of United in Grief, he comes with N95, which is like the mask that you wear. And I think that this track right here is a take at all the Instagram models out there, all the people that want to dress a certain way, wear certain types of bags. And, you know, he even says on the song, you know, take off that Chanel, take off the Dolce, take off the Birkin bag, take all that stuff off, you know, take off that weird ass jewelry, take off the fabricated stems and the microwave memes, take off your idols. Man, there's just so much knowledge that's being dropped here. I don't think that this album is for the weak-minded. I don't think that the weak will be able to pick this up and the knowledge that he is talking about. I really loved how he started off the album. And yes, I mean, this makes a bunch of sense. He's saying that once they take all of the fake designer clothes and the Louis bags and the Gucci and all that we always talk about and the jewelry, what do you have left? You have nothing. Basically, what I think is that he's telling people that it's time for y'all to grow a personality. It's time for people to start realizing that there's more to life than just the designer clothes that you wear and all the photo shoots and the fake photo shoots that you do on your Instagram profile. And like I said, there's so much to digest here that I just want to run through some of these quickly, because if not, you know, we'll be here all day. But another favorite track of mine on here, and there's so many, is the Worldwide Steppers. This is the track that's been getting a lot of attention on social media, where he has a line in here saying, the first time I effed a white B word. You know, I don't want to curse too much in this video. And he doesn't say it like that. And how he didn't know what to think. But then he also goes on deeper in and says that it's retaliation to the ancestors, I guess, from what was going on in the slave trade. And now he's retaliating by being famous and going on tour and having white women that adore him. So now he's able to have sex with them, and he looks at it as retaliation. I mean, he's just going deep into the thoughts here that just make you think. And I'm so happy that there's an album like this, because I feel that definitely for the last year or so, there just has not really been a lot of good hip hop that's been coming out. I don't care what GQ magazine or what Complex or what these other hip hop news media outlets are saying what the dopest album out right now is. They're going to say that about anything. But we all know that right now Kendrick has dropped some heat that's going to make us think. I thought that was a deep one. It's got all the sisters on Twitter mad at that one. But hey, you know, you got to realize it. I just want to go briefly over the tracks that stood out to me. The whole album, I think, is fire, but let's go to the ones that are really powerful. Like if we skip over to Father Time, where he has Sampha being featured, which, you know, is really big right now, and he's getting a lot of attention, and I'm sure after this album he'll get a lot of more attention. That's another thing that I really love about this album, was the whole promotion and the marketing of it. There's not a whole bunch of big name acts on the album. Like, he doesn't have J. Cole that everybody wanted. He doesn't have Drake like everybody wanted. He doesn't have all these artists on the album. As a matter of fact, as I heard some people say, Kodak Black, who was one of the probably the biggest features on the album, next to Ghostface Killah, for all of you that know Wu-Tang still out there, nobody saw those coming. Kanye even, I thought, might have been on this album. It definitely has a Kanye and an Andre 3000 feel, though. But after listening to the album, it didn't need it. It doesn't need it, man. And what he did was very necessary. How we have Taylor Page on the We Cry Together. Oh, man. That's a deep one. But yes, I'm really feeling the features on this. So let me go back real quick to Father Time. I like how he talks about his daddy issues, and he talks about how, you know, a lot of us, especially men of color, don't grow up with our fathers, and we're a fatherless generation. And he definitely touches on that on this album. I mean, there's so many topics and so many theories and deep thoughts and things that we go through in this world that he is just speaking on and that he is touching. And it's what is needed. It's what's needed. And he also has a line where I think even what is it? Academics brought up in one of his posts, which I really because I heard the line and then all of a sudden I saw him post this up and I was just like, oh wow, okay, yeah. And I was like, cool, we're thinking the same thing at the same time. When he went on to say, when Kanye got back with Drake, I was slightly confused. Guess I'm not as mature as I think. Got some healing to do. Whoa, man. Like, that in itself was kind of deep because a lot of people were saying about, of course, all the beef that was going on between Drake and Kanye. And, man, I don't know. Like I said, maybe we got to analyze that a little deeper. But from what I think off the top, I think he's just talking about black men know that, hey, man, we can get more money together if we work together. And we can build more of a cause together. Yeah. That was a powerful line right there. I was feeling that. Now, I thoroughly enjoyed the lyrics on Rich Spirit, where he goes deep into talking about how it just sounds like people trying to paint pictures of him and that he's a celebrity just doing his thing. And now this is where he's at. I love how he goes on to say rich nigga broke phone. This just goes to show, man, that he's not concerned with material possessions. I completely hats off to Kendrick on this, man. This is great. I mean, he's basically telling you in the music where he's been and what he's been doing, and this is why you haven't heard from him in a long time. And just for him to just come out a month earlier and just go ahead and just drop the science on y'all is just brilliant marketing. It's brilliant marketing. But I guess when you're at the level of Kendrick, you can go ahead and do that. He also talks about how one of his cousins tried to sue him in this song. Very interesting. So let's move on. We Cry Together. The one that people really want to hear. And then when I was listening to this beat, I was like, oh, okay. He took it here. I mean, how many people out there were really going off to study the production of this album? I went on and had to look up the production because, of course, we're a producer channel, beatGrade, and we look at producers. So, I see that, of course, he has Boy Wonder, like everybody, Deval Timothy, who I think was playing some keys on a lot of tracks. But on this track, which stood out to me, and let's not forget DJ Khalil, your favorite producer's favorite producer, who's just banging out hits for just everybody that nobody really ever knows about, but he's just out there banging out hits for every major artist. But I want to get into this track where he has The Alchemist. And I was like, man, I know that sounds familiar. Who would have thought that it was Alchemist on this beat? But yes, he also has the actress, Taylor Page, who comes on and does this emotional performance where, like I said, man, this is not a hip hop album, or it's not your typical hip hop album, obviously. This is more like a movie or a book. This is a masterpiece, y'all. This is like, I feel that this album is a masterpiece, but I will say that I feel that the track We Cry Together is like a scene in a movie where you can tell that they are so in character with him and Taylor Page, where they're playing out this role of a couple that's in love, that's having an argument, that's fighting, that's saying all the meanest things that they could possibly say about each other. I felt like I could only listen to this song one time, but then I had to go back and I had to listen to it again. And I was just, man, it was so deep. Like, it touched me so much that I felt some kind of thing when I was listening to the song. It was making me feel a way to where I just wanted to turn it off because it was just making me feel some sort of a way. And I was like, man, that's how powerful it is that it's making me feel this way. She goes on to disrespect his manhood, talking about, oh, you're a womanizer because your mother showed you no affection, you have a small dick, just all kinds of things that she goes on to talking about. What else? And then Kendrick goes on to say about how females don't get along with each other and how come they don't rap on each other's songs. Sounds like a jab at Cardi B and Nicki Minaj. Yeah, man, it's just great, man. And then after they go through their argument like couples normally do, then they decide to have the makeup sex at the end of the song like most couples do. It's just brilliant. It's brilliant, you know. The whole role, the whole acting, the scene. I felt like when I was listening to the song, I felt like a movie was going on in my head, and I saw the whole thing right there. I was right there with them when they were in character. It was great. Purple Hearts. Now this one was interesting. Summer Walker is now officially on my radar. I'm sure she's going to be on her way to do big things. Ghostface Killer, how he came in with the telekinesis. I mean, this verse was just deep. It was just, man, I think that Ghostface's verse just went over a bunch of people's heads. Because I haven't heard anybody say anything about Ghostface's verse. Maybe it's still early. The album just dropped a few hours ago. So maybe it's still early. But I will say that Ghostface's verse on there has got to be one of the deepest verses I've ever heard Ghostface spit. It was out of this world, man. Count Me Out. Another great one. I think it's another song where he's talking about, you know, hey man, just count him out. You know what I mean? Like, stop putting all this on him. You can count him out. Crown. This was actually one of my favorite songs on the album. I love this song. Crown is on repeat. This was like actually one of the reasons why I was listening to the album for 4 hours, because I think I played this song about 20 times in a row, and I'm gonna play it again after I'm done with this video. This song was just amazing. I loved how he's like rhyming over piano melodies and riffs and keyboards, and it's not like your typical beats. As I heard one person say, this album is engineered masterfully. Yeah, I love how he goes on to say he can't please everybody. It's almost like he knew that with this album that he was not going to please everybody with this album. He probably thought in his head that everybody wants to hear a Good Kid, Mad City Part 2 or ADHD or To Pimp a Butterfly type tracks, even though this was kind of similar to Pimp a Butterfly, but I think it was slightly better, or not slightly better. Actually, I think it was far better. I'm not sure why yet. I can't really express it into words, but I think that it was far better than To Pimp a Butterfly. But yes, Crown, I think, is definitely one of my top 5 on this album. Silent Hill, great song. Featuring Kodak Black. Who would have thought? Kodak Black comes out of nowhere on this album, and I gotta say, man, he delivers. He delivers. Like some people had said, man, Kodak Black was the last person I thought was going to be featured on this album. But he has some lyrics in here where he says he's putting you up on knowledge and putting you up on game on a lot of things that you need to know. Let's take some notes, man. Let's take some notes. Here we have a multi-millionaire, famous rapper, pretty much shut down the internet when he announced the release of his album. And this man said that he goes months without his phone and enjoys the silence, the inner silence. You know, if we go back to that, which the world around me evolves, I reflect on what matters most, the life in which my words will land next. As I produce my final TDE album, I feel the joy to have been part of such a cultural imprint after 17 years. Let me go to the end of this where he says, as I continue to pursue my life's calling. Not mad at that, man. Not mad at that. Savior. Loved it. Loved it. I actually like Baby Keem on here too on the hook. I think that he did a great job on the hook, where he comes off on the, why you ain't happy for me? Really, you happy for me? Smile in my face, but you happy for me? Really? Kendrick goes on to say some pretty dope stuff in this on this track. He said in some of the lyrics, I seen niggas arguing about who's blacker. Even blacked out screens in society called it solidarity. Meditating in silence makes you want to tell on me. Wow, meditating in silence. I mean, he's telling y'all on this album where he was, And then he goes on to talk about Kyrie, and how he had that whole thing with the NBA and catching the COVID and all this stuff. And he goes on to say that a Christian told him that the vaccine is the mark of the beast. Wow. This is something that makes you think, man. There's no other rappers that are talking like this. There are absolutely no other rappers that are talking like this. Y'all gotta pay attention, man. Y'all gotta pay attention. It's like, I don't even understand when somebody's coming with an album that's making you think and talking about stuff, and then he goes on to talk about how Tupac ain't here and your heroes are looking for villains to help. Man, like I said, this is like a novel where you actually got to sit down and dissect this word from word just to get the knowledge. I'm gonna move on. Auntie Diaries. If there isn't already a lot of people on the internet talking about this. Now, this one goes into how he had an aunt who was transgender at a young age. Is that he goes on to say how they made fun of him at school and talked about him, and dropped the F-bombs and not the, curse F-bomb, the other F-bomb. So, yeah, this is a track where he touches on the transgender community, and he talks about how his auntie becomes a man. Now, I don't know if this is fully true, but a lot of people have said that Kendrick is the first rapper to touch on a transgender subject. But maybe just on a larger scale. But yes, he talks about how his friends in school didn't understand it and said that, this was that and that was that. But he was saying, hey, you know what? He had girls, he had money. That's what it is. And then he also goes on to flip to say that his cousin, which was a man, turns into a woman. So very deep topic. Like I said, Kendrick goes on to being the fatherless generation, going on to be talking about the couple situation and how you have the breakups, talking about how he had to meditate in silence. Then he goes off to talk about how he can't please everybody, talking about the vaccines and everything. And then now we're going into the transgender subject. He's basically touching everything that's going on in the current world right now that everybody's arguing about. Not to mention that he also goes on briefly about cancel culture and how everybody's too sensitive and that you can't even speak your mind freely anymore. Not sure though if we ever could. So then that brings us off into the next, Mr. Morale. So yeah, on this Mr. Morale track, this is the one where he gets pretty deep and he goes off to talk about, I think about Robert Kelly. If he weren't molested, I wonder if life will fail him. I wonder if Oprah found closure the way she postered the hurt that a woman carries. Wow. Deep, my brother. That one is the one where I'm wondering if Oprah will hear. Yeah, man, he's going in on this, man. This album is an album, as I've mentioned, that just makes you think, makes you want to go back and rewind. Like, wait. What did he say right there? What did he say? I got to just go back and listen to that again. Mother, I Sober, featuring Beth Gibbons of Portishead. How many of y'all out there know them? Love that band. Can I say that this is another deep track where I'm not sure if it quite suggests the fact that he might have been molested by his cousin, but he's definitely talking about some things that happened and how his family was asking if his cousin had did some things to him, and he said that his cousin didn't, but that his family didn't believe him. And then she goes on to say, you know, in the song that, you know, he wishes he was somebody other than himself, which makes you wonder if they were putting the idea of suicide out there. So now we have transgender, we have vaccines, we have daddy issues from a fatherless generation, we have couples that can't get along, not to mention the deep fake video where he morphed into a bunch of black men that were going through crisis. But then he also goes on to talk about molestation. I mean, what subject on this album is Kendrick not touching? He touched just about everything on this album, man. Because he says that he sees other rappers that have probably had the same thing happen to them, and that he can tell that they're burying their pain in chains and tattoos. I mean, yeah, man, this is just an album that just makes you think. Let me just bring it here and just say this is definitely an album that is going to be on repeat for a long time. And I don't think anything else compares to this. I mean, I went back, I listened to the Future album, I listened to the Jack Harlow album, I listened to the Pusha T album. I mean, there's other albums that I got to listen to. Those were just like the top ones that were on my radar that I just wanted to hit real quick. And it's just, man, Kendrick is in a league of his own. Masterpiece, I think it's 5 mics. If you ask us, I'm pretty sure everybody on the team agrees. I'll have to get some more votes later on from everybody, but I think we're all in agreement that this album is a classic. This album is a masterpiece. I'm calling it now that it's going to win some Grammys. Yeah, man, I got to tell you, like, it's you know, I heard a lot of people, just like I said, on social media that just haven't had a chance to really digest this album. I think they're just looking for the turn up, you know? They just want to bump and bob and drive around and be like, yeah, I'm bumping the new Kendrick. And it's not that type of an album. It's not that type of an album. This is an album that you're supposed to sit back and listen and meditate to. That's what this album is right here. I think his previous albums were more like just bumping and having fun with, which he has the same kind of tracks on all of his albums, and then he has the songs that make you think. But I think that this album more so is definitely way more of a thinking album than any of his previous albums. And that's why I thought it'd be great to take the time to dissect this album for those that don't want to take the time to really study the lyrics and study the production and study what is being brought in this album. But I will tell you this, though, that I am still studying this album. And for what it's worth, I will go ahead and call it and say that this album is a masterpiece.